Black Agenda Radio with Glenn Ford and Nellie Bailey, Mondays at 4 p.m. on the Progressive Radio Network.
This is Black Agenda Radio, a weekly hour of African American political thought and action.
Welcome to the radio magazine that brings you news, analysis, and commentary from a black left perspective. I'm Glenn Ford. My co-host, Nellie Bailey, is away this week. Coming up, the U.S. House overwhelmingly rejects the notion of U.S. ground troops in Libya. Voters seem to be rejecting Republican plans to privatize Medicare. Black Chicago hosts a conference to revive the reparations movement, and some differing opinions of Manning Marable's controversial book on Malcolm X. But first, former Georgia Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney has returned from Tripoli, Libya, where she witnessed the most savage NATO bombing to date of the capital city.
It is a travesty what is happening. NATO seems to be able to bomb downtown Tripoli, even in a residential neighborhood, with impunity.
Did you see visible signs of fear or defiance among the population?
Oh, there wasn't very much fear. People are very defiant. They understand, from my experience, they understand very well what the circumstances are. The people that I saw understood the severe kinds of problems associated with the bombing itself and the psychological wounds that are being visited upon the population, particularly the children. I witnessed, of course, as in the midst of all of the heaviest bombing to date in Tripoli, there were people who were hurt, there were young children who were afraid, the kinds of things that you never ever expect to see in a civilized country. There is nothing like experiencing a raid up close and personal. And that is unfortunately what people all over Libya are experiencing right now, because NATO has chosen to deliver these devastating blows to the population. In Gaddafi's family home, the 1986 home that was bombed by U.S. forces, that same bombing raid on his home in 1986 that killed his daughter, that home is called al-Azizia. And now the people actually have a party there every night. So the bombing starts at night, and the NATO forces continue to bomb al-Azizia, the area around al-Azizia, and you've been there, so you know what that is like. And yet, every night, the people gather there, they have a concert, they dance, it's like a block party, and they have that block party every night. Now, I just happened to be at the television station, and a bomb went off, and the people were still partying. Even the night of the intense bombing, the people did not leave al-Azizia. And here is an interesting thing. I was recently just told what al-Azizia means and the significance of that place. Al-Azizia means the door, the portal, the door to Africa. That is what Libya is or wants to be to African people, the portal through which they can come back home. Instead of hovering at home or hiding out or whatever, the people are at al-Azizia and they're having a party. Now, what I would like to do is organize a peace concert at al-Azizia. I don't know about doing it at night, but I think it would be the perfect place for us to organize to have some of our young recording artists go there and do a concert for the Libyan people.
We know that all of the major corporate media in the United States and Europe are in Tripoli, but we don't see much coverage from them of the trials and travails of the Libyan people underneath that bombing. What did you observe of the international corporate media while you were in Tripoli?
Well, the interesting thing is that I was actually with the journalists from the Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and the New York Times. And they told me that I was very courageous to be there during that time. You know, I said to myself, but they won't ever write that. They asked me if I, could help them get an interview with the leader, and they promised me that they would tell his side of the story. And I said to myself, actually, I didn't say it to myself, I said it to them, just like you tell my side. So we can't expect that they're going to even tell the people's side. And what is it that the people are experiencing inside of this humanitarian intervention? What the people are experiencing is pain, psychological attack. Basically, what they want to do is to destroy the morale of the people. They are doing that by denying medicine, denying benzene, like gasoline for us. You see a traffic jam and you think it's a traffic jam, but it's just a line 4 rows deep, cars lined up at the service station. And what NATO has effectively just put a blockade on. When the government sent an Italian woman to Italy to purchase medicine for the hospitals, Italy refused to release the medicine. I was on the Alex Jones show last night, and he said that's a war crime. Well, there's lots of war crimes that are being committed by NATO. The question is, will the American people hold their government, their leadership accountable for the war crimes that are being committed against an African country, against African people?
Did you meet with high Libyan officials while you were there? And if so, did you see any signs of a breaking of morale?
I met with people from civil society. I met with business people. I met with average, ordinary Libyans. I met with students there. And honestly, no, green flags waving everywhere. These people have chosen their leader. They're satisfied with their leader. And of course, no one says that their government is perfect, because I don't say that about my own government. But they are satisfied with their leadership, and they resent NATO telling them who their leader should be. But then, of course, black people in the United States should be very well accustomed to the powers that be telling them who their leaders are and who their leaders are not. The difference, though, is that black people the people in Libya refuse to have other people from outside telling them who their leaders are. The NATO action is a humanitarian disaster, and it makes a mockery of the lie that they tell that their motive is humanitarian intervention. These are people who understand that their country is under siege. Their ability to determine their own future, to make their own decisions about who their leader is, what kind of government they want to have, what kinds of policies and priorities are important to them, all of that is under attack. And they are willing to defend it with their lives.
Cynthia McKinney speaking from the North African country of Tunisia on her way home from Libya. The House of Representatives gave overwhelming approval to a defense spending bill amendment that prohibits the deployment of U.S. troops on the ground in Libya. Black Detroit Congressman John Conyers sponsored the amendment. We asked Matt Southworth, legislative associate of the Friends Committee on National Legislation, what kind of signal Congress was sending to President Obama.
Well, I think it's actually a really strong signal. I would say it's one of the biggest anti-war victories in decades, certainly in my lifetime. It sends a signal to the Obama administration that Congress does not approve of a third war. It sends a signal to the world that the United States is not in the business of occupation. And I think, honestly, overall, it sends a really strong signal that the president needs to seek congressional authority to do these kinds of things, regardless of his interpretation of the War Powers Act.
Much of the discussion was, of course, about what does the War Powers Resolution mean. The president seems to think it means something differently than most of us understood.
Yeah, that's true. The Undersecretary of State, James Steinberg, was testifying to Congress on the War Powers Resolution a few weeks ago, and he essentially said, maybe we will need to seek approval, but we'll just suspend drone strikes for a little while, and then we'll get another 60 days. And honestly, it's just a complete misinterpretation of the War Powers Resolution, which explicitly states that the president does not have the authorization to conduct military operations unless there is an imminent threat to the United States, and Libya clearly wasn't. If our litmus for intervening around the world is folks are in trouble, then we would be intervening in a lot more places. And frankly, it's not something we can afford. And secondarily, it's not something that is actually advantageous to solving a problem like that. We're talking about a political problem which one needs to seek political solutions for, not military solutions.
Even President Bush respected the War Powers Resolution, although he seemed to resent it. If President Obama continues to ignore the War Powers Resolution, wouldn't he be out-bushing Bush?
One could say, and that's pretty unfortunate if you think about it. President Obama has done things that President Bush wouldn't do, which surprises me to say, because it's not exactly what I would have expected a few years ago. But the reality is, he unilaterally authorized action in Pakistan. President Bush wouldn't even do that. Obviously, President Bush didn't intervene in the Sudan. So there are other instances of other examples where, in many ways, President Obama has taken a more militant stance, and I think that's worth noting. Primarily, I believe it's for political reasons, but of course, there's not any real strong evidence for that.
You're at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. From your observation, what does the Obama administration believe limits its authority, or are there no limits in terms of foreign policy?
That's kind of a tough question to answer even. It's hard to say. I think the Obama administration has taken a hard line that other administrations, including the Bush administration, didn't even necessarily take. You know, we've been waging these covert wars in Yemen, in Pakistan, and other places around the world, and doing so under both the Bush and Obama administrations. So I would say that they don't feel that their authority is very limited at all by Congress.
Does this rejection by Congress of U.S. boots on the ground in Libya, does this indicate to you that Congress is in a mood to limit the president's authority to wage war?
I think so. I mean, I think Congress in general has been pretty upset with the fact that they weren't properly consulted before the UN-endorsed, UN-sanctioned, and Arab League-endorsed no-fly zone in Libya was implemented. I think Congress, some folks have said the president consulted the UN and he consulted the Arab League, but he didn't consult Congress, and that's obviously problematic. I think Senator Richard Lugar, who is a Republican from Indiana, has been one of the most outspoken senators in regards to this particular thing, just basically saying the president needs to come to Congress before he wages these kinds of endeavors.
And it would do us a lot of good if we had an anti-war movement worthy of the name, too, wouldn't it?
Well, that's true. I'm actually the D.C. chapter president of Iraq Veterans Against the War. I served a tour duty in 2004 in northern Iraq, and I've been involved in the peace movement or anti-war movement for 4 or 5 years now, and it is, I think, a lack of strategy on our part. We have a lot of tactics, and some of our tactics work really well, but they don't fit within a strategy. And I've heard it said before that tactics without strategy are noise before defeat, and I think that's very accurate.
Matt Southworth speaking from Washington.